What's up? Okay, so we've done the Crony video. Thing's pathetic. 368, I think, was our top speed. And that's at 10 pumps. But the accuracy is actually really good on this thing. I think better with the Super H points from RWS. They did the best. Super Point Extras, I guess they call them. But anyways, we're going to definitely make sure they're dialed in, but at 368 feet per second, I can literally watch the pellet drop into the target from 33 feet away. For those of you who don't know, that would be 11 yards, or in our world, 10 meters. I'm in Canada. Thank you. Anyways, so I paid $89 Canadian for this gun, and I don't regret it even though it's running a little on the slow side. But it has happened before to people in the past running even worse. I mean, they do detune these guns for Canada sometimes very stupidly. But I guess there's a cover the butt thing because no two guns are the same. No two valves will put out the same amount of power. So they do have to be a little bit more paranoid for the Canadian market, I guess, but I don't know why. I don't know. I think we should just, convert to the U.S. as far as, air guns go. No air gun, regardless of speed or energy level, is considered a firearm unless used in the commission of a crime, and that's the way it should be. But, of course, I don't know how they deal with the whole commission of the crime thing on air guns, but whatever. Point being, this thing is definitely getting a full-powered valve upgrade. Now, I found out this is actually a Variant 2. The Variant 1 had the black front sight. The Variant 2 has the fiber optic front sight. Variant 1, of course, had the small transfer port that you will find in a Canadian 1377 pistol. And it also, that one would have actually a bleed hole in the valve on top of that. This one, if it was a first variant, would have a full-powered American valve in it, I call them. And it would have the small transfer port. But this is a Phase 2. So Phase 2 model, this has the full-size transfer port, and it has the brass valve, by the way. We did confirm it is a brass valve, so we are dealing with a second variant. And a much older gun, too, because I don't know exactly when they discontinued it, but it was some years ago. Anyways, so it does have the brass valve, but it has brass valve with a bleed hole. Plugging the bleed hole doesn't always work as planned. Okay, I mean 360 and plugging that hole, I might get it up to 420 if I'm lucky, maybe. Okay, so forget it. I'm not even going to try it. I'm just going to throw the valve out of the gun, put in a full-powered aluminum valve, because that's all we can get these days anyways, and we'll see what happens with the speed and if we have to take down the speed any further, in which case I already have parts prepped and ready to go to get this thing so I can dial it into the precise area that I want it. And I want it into the late 480s, early 490s is where I'm looking at with a 14.3 grain standard weight pellet. And that's what I'm going to tune it up for. And then we'll have a gun that we actually don't have to watch the pellet drop into the trap. Because for all the effort of pumping this thing up 10 times for full power, I don't want to watch the pellet go boom into the trap, okay? Literally, I can see it do it. I want to just pull the trigger, hear that gun go off, and then the only other thing I want to hear is ka-chang at the target, and I don't even want to see the pellet hit the target, other than where it makes the hole in the paper. So, and then of course we'll shoot other stuff in other videos. So we're going to have a number of videos on this thing once I get it dialed in. I did pick up a Crossman steel breech. It's also I think these are the first variants. Yes, because the first variant, there was no support for a rear sight. Second variant, they did make, for a limited time anyways, a different breech that would support the rear plastic sight, because a lot of people crabbed, because it's like, why should I buy this breech and then spend, like $60 on a notch sight or $48 on an LPA sight? I shouldn't have to, because there's nothing wrong with the front and rear sights that come with the gun. You can dial this thing in and be very deadly, just like the 2240s, etc., okay? Good sighting systems, even though they're plastic, well, except for the back blade, of course, on the elevation part of the rear. It's metal, but they dial in quite nicely. I'm getting older now. My eyes aren't so hot. I need to use scopes nowadays more than anything. But that's the way it goes. So I also did put on, this scope is actually my Crossman 4x32, which was a replacement scope for my Phoenix that Crossman sent me. The Phoenix comes with a very poor quality scope. This one is much better, but I'm not risking it on that gun. I'll either shoot that gun just with open sights, or maybe down the road if I find a deal on a really good scope that'll handle nitro power and spring power, then I'll throw a better scope on it. But otherwise I can stay with open sights, or maybe I'll red dot it, who knows. But it's not a gun where I want to invest a lot of money because it is 177. You know, certain 177 guns, okay, that one, no. But that's a whole other video to go through. However, getting on with the rest of this gun, it's in cherry condition, and for $90 I couldn't bat an eye. $89 in tax. It was like $101 or something like that out the door with the tax. But I couldn't say no to it. You know, it's just an incredible price for a vintage gun that also is pretty much unused, other than the fact that I did have to replace the pump cup. I don't know what the guy used to oil it with, but maybe that was part of the problem. I don't know for sure. When I did disassemble it, I cleaned it all up with contact cleaner to get all the old oil off, put it back together, and it stayed together. So I figured, well, I don't like taking these things apart too often because, you know, they're a bit of a process, right? So I robbed the parts from my 1377 pistol and put that piston as well as pump cup into this gun, and because they're the same parts, so what the heck. And then I put the parts out of this into that. Now, one thing I did notice was I think I'm gonna have to do the pump cup in that thing because it opens up way too easily. So that's telling me that there's a bit of a problem somewhere. So I don't know, it could be even the piston. Maybe the piston wrist is a little on the worn side, who knows. But I'm going to order spare parts, and then I'll put that gun back to normal anyhow eventually. In the meantime, I do have to put a full power valve in this thing because 368 feet per second is pathetic and totally unusable realistic in 22. Even at 10 meters for target shooting, it's not really hitting hard. Like, the pellets are not quite getting half squished, and that to me is very disappointing. We have cronied the gun and done an accuracy test, as you've seen video for that by now. If you haven't, check it out. But this thing needs to run into the 490s. That's where it needs to run, and that's where I'm going to dial it in for to be able to run solid at, because then this way I know I have lots of power for 10 yards or 10 meters and 20 meters, even upwards to 30 meters. If I can get this thing into the 490 range, then that will be perfect for upwards to that. The scope, on the other hand, it's kind of a funny scope. It's got a prefix parallax at 30 yards, but it is a little tricky to set up at 10 meters because that parallax can really mess with your vision and, you know, seeing, you know, where you're lining things up. So it can make sighting in the gun and even just general shooting a pain. So I'm eventually going to get a much better scope for this gun, but at least I've got a steel breech for it now, and I've got a better scope. For those of you who wanted to know too, which will save me a video perhaps, I did try the Crossman 760 KT rifle scope from that rifle that I picked up the other day. It turns out the scope will not hold zero even on a pump-up gun, so the scope is going to have a lot to do with the accuracy at where things are sitting at now with that gun. Either way, I still had to redo the crown on the muzzle on that thing because it was horrifying. So I'll have to try shooting out open sights with it, or a better scope, or maybe I'll just butcher the gun for parts, who knows, we'll see. But in the meantime, this is my priority gun. I would recommend that if you can find yourself a 2289, these guns are great. I loved mine, I adored mine. I even tricked it out with a wood stock, wood pump arm, the whole nine. 2260 trigger set on it, and I sold it to some guy in BC that wanted it, and that was like years ago, years and years and years ago, and I kind of always kicked myself for it, and I always wanted another original one day, and I was able to find one, and at a really awesome price. It's a good thing they don't care about vintage prices at the hawk shop, because I would have had to pay a lot more, but works for me. This does have the push button release. That push button, by the way, can dig into your hand a bit. So when you're pumping the gun, I'd recommend holding the stock down in here instead of holding it up at the pistol grip. And your hand will stay in a lot better shape. It's just starting to carve into my hand, and it's kind of tender right now. But that is one part of the gun is a bit of a con, is that push button system. Now you can remove the push button system. It's just a pin and a spring, and drill some holes right through the bullseye of the little target. Hit dead bullseye on each side with your drill bit. Throw some screws in there, which will also give you a much, positive lockup. But then it's not so convenient to take the stock off and put it in your backpack at that point. I do kind of like the fact that it's a fast takedown system, so I'm leaving it the way it is. I'll just have to always remember to grab lower on the stock to pump the thing and save my hand. But you can mount whatever optics you want on the dovetail. You can have a laser, you can have the scope, you can, whatever you want to do, right? Whatever optic choice you have, red dot, green dot, that sort of thing. It is lightweight, it is comfortable to hold. It's very nice for shooting. It's not going to fatigue you weight-wise. The only fatigue you're going to get is the constant pumping up to 10 times every time for a full power shot. Otherwise, you can vary the power and have lesser power, but then you're going to have to be at a much closer range for shooting when you're using lesser pumps. So that's the price you pay on any pump-up gun. It's the way they work. You deal with it. The great side effect, though, being a pumper, winter shooting is awesome because your speed will not be affected any more than it is in the summertime with the gun. You always have a plus or minus from shot to shot, which is normal for any gun regardless of power plant. So whatever variable you're going to get in the summertime in a hot day like this, and it's scorchy right now and it's getting hotter as we speak, you're only going to see that same variance going on in the winter after your first shot. I've done extensive testing with pumpers, CO2 guns, and springers. I do have to test out nitro this winter because I've got my first couple of nitro guns, and I want to see how they actually are going to react in the winter compared to a springer. If we're going to have issues or not. So we're going to do a freeze test and shoot them and see what happens. Cross our fingers, nothing goes wrong. But otherwise, I don't have anything real bad to say about a backpacker. They're fantastic guns, even brand new. The price on them was very good, whether you bought it in Canada or US. In Canada we only got access to the detuned versions. Unless you had your PAL, then you could have a PAL version of it. Not a big deal. A lot of guns by Crossman are built both ways for the Canadian detuned market as well as our regular PAL accessible stuff. So you just have to have the appropriate PAL license, whether it's a pistol or a rifle, that's all, if you're buying stuff that's in that PAL rated category, okay, or over 500 feet per second category. But otherwise, they are great solid shooters, even without upgrading to a steel breech, just leaving the breech stock sights on. They're fantastic shooters. They dial in rather well. I've not known too many of the 2289s to be all that pellet fussy. I started out with premium pointed pellets, 14.3s from Crossman. They did fairly good, but the Super Point Extras from RWS did a much tighter group. It's just that we have a speed issue that we have to resolve, and then we'll get even better results and more stable results too. Otherwise, I can't really knock the gun for much of anything. Other than it does have quite the heavy trigger pull, but you guys should know that if you have 13 X Series guns or other 22 X Series guns, you will know that these guns notoriously have always had a heavy trigger pull, which is great for the kids, but for some of us adults that don't like to go, ugh, we'd rather just go ting. I did lighten the trigger pull up quite substantially. I had a spare couple of springs to guinea pig with, so I sanded about a coil and a half roughly off and popped it in, and yeah, it goes off rather easy now. It's not as feather light as, blow on it and it goes off, but if you dropped the gun, I'm sure it would go off, so it's pretty sensitive, which is the way I like it. Saves a lot of time trying to line up your target. So now you can have faster target acquisition and real quick instead of, okay, I'm starting to pull, I'm wobbling, oh, I gotta stop, and okay, now I can pull. You know, I mean, come on, really? The triggers are too heavy. They need to lighten those up a little bit. But you can do that yourself, it's real easy. And this thing doesn't take much effort now, which is exactly the way I like it. Does have your standard cross safety on here. Push it to the left for fire, to the right, and it's locked. Now you can still cock the gun even though it's on safe, but you cannot fire it, okay? So you push it in and you can go. But yeah, and to get your maximum air volume in per pump, you have to open this all the way, because there's a little space in there between the front of the pump face and the bottom of the slit down here. That's where it's going to bring the air in through and then push it in, okay? There's 4 pumps right there, and away you go. So, nice gun. You know, even you could just shoot it even like this. It's still well balanced, especially with the stock on the back. But even like this, you're good too, you know? It's really nice. So if you're thinking of maybe pest control type of thing, you could do that with this gun rather easily if you can get it running closer to 500 feet per second for the Canadian version if you're in Canada. But at 360, I wouldn't even attempt it. But yeah, so there is that disappointment in the speed overall, but we can fix that rather easily. Definitely was worth the money, definitely worth the money new. They're great guns, guys. I've worked on a lot of these things over the years, done a lot of modifications to them for dress-up parts and functional parts that are dress-up, as well as getting them closer to that 500. I think mine was running about 492, 493, the one I had years ago. That's about where it was sitting at, and it would be very consistent at that speed. It would never actually drop below 490, okay, which was really good. So that gave me a lot of energy, good range, great accuracy with the pellets that were being used because they were able to run at a good enough speed for their weight, and did rather well, so quite happy with it. And we'll do that once again with this one and tweak her up, and we'll come back and with videos once I've done that, and we'll re-chrony it. We'll do a new accuracy test with the changes being made and see how it does in comparison. Then you'll have videos to compare with. In the meantime, I'm getting out of here. I'm going to go play around with this thing and see if I can harvest some parts out of another gun to get this thing running better today. That'll be my project. If you're not subscribed, please do so. Smash the bell for notifications for my videos, and we'll definitely catch you guys on the next one. I have no idea what's coming up even next week, if I'm going to even get another gun next week. I have no idea yet. Probably thinking, I don't think I'm getting any new guns next week, but we'll see what happens. You never know from one day to the next with me. Anyways, see you later. Ciao.